My name's Emily Martin, and I'm taking you behind the scenes to talk to equine artists from around the world. This is Artist Unlocked. All right, we are halfway through season 1, trucking along here. This week's guest is Heather Bullock of Equine Confections Studio. Heather is an extremely talented oils artist, and she's also a flatwork artist, and so art has always been a part of her life. I'm an oils artist myself, so it was really amazing to get to talk to Heather and learn more about her process. In the episode, we talk about her techniques and how she put that on her YouTube channel. We talk about business side of the hobby, which I feel like isn't talked about enough. I think there's like this stigma that if you're making money from it, you know, it's no longer art or it's less meaningful, which I think is completely far from the truth, and it really just depends on the person whether you want to take on that responsibility of doing art for other people. So I really enjoyed talking to her about the business side of things as well. You can view the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, so there are many options for you guys to view it if you prefer to listen on your commute, things like that. And without further ado, let's get into the episode. So I guess starting out, just introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What's your studio name? What do you do? What do you specialize in? Things like that.
Yeah, so I'm Heather Bullock of Equine Confections Studio, and I am a model horse painter. I've been painting for 15 years, or 16 now. I'm going to my 16th year.
Wow.
I started out as a pastel artist. I've been for the past 6 or so years transitioning into oils, or I started transitioning about 6 years ago, and now I'm mainly working oils with, of course, then detailing with acrylics and colored pencils occasionally. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I myself, I've been doing customizing work for I guess the last 5 years, but I bounced around with all types of mediums, and I really like oils.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my biggest complaints about them is I feel like it's hard to not have brushstrokes in them, even if I'm using the right brushes and stuff. And so I know a lot of people start off airbrushing the base coat so you have something for them to build on top of. But I applaud you for your work with oils because they're amazing.
Thank you. No, that was definitely the biggest hurdle. And it's interesting because I'm also a flatwork painter. And so I was working in oils on canvas before I started using them on models. I was at least familiar with the medium.
Right.
But that was the biggest hurdle for me, figuring out how to, because on a canvas, brush strokes can actually be desirable because they create an interesting texture, but on models, not so much. So that was definitely a hurdle. It felt like I was learning an entirely new media, but to get past that learning curve,
yeah,
no
and I definitely want to dive into that. But I guess first off, give everybody an overview of I guess your journey. Did you start off do you collect? How long were you doing? How'd you get into it to begin with? All those good things.
So I grew up collecting the briars, and I would get one every year for my birthday and Christmas, and I love them. And I always loved horses. I never owned horses or really did much riding at all, but as an artist, I was always drawing them. And one year for Christmas, I really wanted a subscription to a horse magazine. And I knew that Breyer had a magazine, and it was called Just About Horses, and it had a picture of a real horse on the front. So I thought, why not this one? This looks fun. And I get it, and it's a model horse magazine. And I was like, I wasn't expecting that, which, Breyer is producing a magazine. But, that was my 13-year-old brain didn't connect those dots. But, so I was a little bit disappointed at first because I was wanting a magazine that had a bunch of horse pictures that I could draw.
Right.
And, obviously the model horse magazine. And then I started seeing tutorials for how to customize your model by Jen Danza. And so I was like, this is really interesting. I have some older ones that are banged up and I would love to revitalize them. So I'm going to practice this. So I decided to jump in and try customizing them, and sort of took off from there.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. I don't think I've ever
I
heard
know.
anybody.
Yeah, I had no idea of the model horse hobby beyond just, the Breyer models that I saw in the store. And yeah, it was by accidentally subscribing to a model horse magazine that I discovered this. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's cool. So then I guess from there, you said you started with pasteling.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So was that like from ground zero how you started, or did you I feel like at least I have like these blobby horses when I first started of just like craft acrylics that I was like trying to make it look right.
Yeah, actually, no, I never did start with just the craft acrylics. I started with pastels following the tutorial, and yes, I still have my first one. Because I followed the tutorial very closely. I mean, it's for a first, I can see that it's not terrible.
Right.
But then like second, third, fourth are like just like horrible. Like my second one I did because I tried a different color, and like it was just horribly streaky. And to cover up the streaks, I was like, well, I'm gonna make it a pinto. And like at that point, I had no idea of like the rules of pinto markings. So it's just like, if I'm just putting pinto markings to cover up the streaks, they're like all random and like completely unrealistic and horrible. And that's okay. We all start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So true. Overall, what is your favorite and least favorite part about the hobby, or like the artistry side of the hobby?
Oh, interesting question. I have to think about. Favorite part of it. I think I just like I love how I've been seeing lately in the past several years, the bar just keeps being raised, which I think is a wonderful thing for all of us. While at the same time, like there's healthy competition. There's never this. I mean, yeah, it's only we all want each other to keep getting better and doing better because it lifts us all up. So I think that's really wonderful, and all the inspiration that I get from following other artists. Least favorite. I don't know. Nothing is coming to mind. Something I don't like about it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, some people don't. I tend to think that the hobby tends to be pretty positive overall. Obviously, like no matter where you go, there's going to be some people that are like that. But yeah, one of the things I think a lot of people turn to the hobby for is because it's like so positive and uplifting, like you said. Like it's competition, but it's healthy competition.
Yeah.
I think most people, obviously some people are more guarded about like their process than others, but I think overall people are pretty like accepting and like willing to like help mentor and teach other artists and people looking to get into it. So yeah, I think it's
for sure.
So then I guess going back a little bit too, so you're first and foremost, I guess, a 2D artist, or did you like transition fully into the models because of your love for the 2D? How was that process?
So they've really always sort of gone hand in hand. So, I mean, from as young as I can remember, I was always drawing. And so I was always artistic. And then when I discovered model horse painting, I jumped into that very quickly. And that was I was like 15, so in high school. And I started, within a few years, I was selling. And then I went to college for art. So I was learning more of the two-dimensional craft there while I was using model horses to keep my income going throughout college. That was my summer job, which was pretty great. And so then in the time since, it's sort of just been filled because I built that base of being involved in the model horse hobby and having a client base and all of that. That's been kind of a consistent. The two-dimensional art, took a little bit longer to get established, but now I kind of just work on both. It ebbs and flows a little bit, which side I'm working a little bit more, depending on where the work is. But I love having both because they're so different that it can kind of help me from getting too burnt out in one area.
For sure.
But both are like creative work that I get to do on my own terms, which
Right.
is amazing. I love
Yeah.
it. So yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any tips for artists who kind of are entering into the hobby that kind of want to get where you are, slash, the business side of it, which I know some
Mhm.
people prefer to just do it for fun, but then there is like a very real business side to the hobby. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes there's like struggles that people have of like, how do I build a client base? How do I, get my work out there so that I can sell pieces, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I would say to all of that, like, there aren't, I can't say that there are really tips and tricks, like, do this and then you'll have success. Like,
Right.
it all comes down to just keep showing up, keep doing the work. There's no other, I mean, I've been doing it for 15 years. You can't, you can't make up for that. Like,
Right.
so,
Just like
and
poof, overnight.
yeah, so while that could seem daunting, like, you mean I have to wait 15 years to get in? No, that doesn't mean, I mean, because I definitely had years that I was slower, a handful of years that I maybe only did 2 or 3 models because I was in school or I was working on there were a couple of years where I was really focused on big projects with my two-dimensional work. So I was hardly touching models. But so yeah, it's not to say that it's going to take you that long to get anywhere by any means, but if the only way to get there is to put in the work, you might as well just start today and just start doing the work and see what happens, see where it takes you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point too about the some people just like to do it just as a hobby. Like, that is totally fine. And in fact, when it comes to creative things, a lot of times, and for a lot of people, putting the pressure of making money on it can kind of kill that creativity.
Yeah.
It's an interesting balance for me because I feel like while like art making when I was younger used to be like a stress relieving outlet, it's not really that anymore. And that's not to say I don't love it and it's not wonderful. It's just like, that's not my like creative outlet because there's always tied to business in some way. And so it becomes work. I love it. I'm so grateful that it's work, but I have to find other ways of like having a creative outlet that's totally pressure free.
Yeah.
So if you just love painting to paint, like, that is totally fine. And yeah, if you want to take it to a business, it's absolutely viable. Like I said, just start where you're at, keep working, keep practicing, keep showing up by like posting things and interacting with other people in person or online. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of people expect it to be like, I mean, I know it's easy when you get into it too to have these high expectations for yourself of like, oh, like they're doing that. And then they don't realize that it's like, it's 15 years of work that you're looking at. And, you really do. You have to just practice and learn a lot about like anatomy too. I feel like anyway, that helps with the sculptural side of things. But I know you said that you kind of, since it is like it's work for you, but it's like obviously what you love to do, but do you still ever feel like burnt out, or are there times where you just have to kind of push through it, and like how do you push through that?
Oh, absolutely. There are times that I feel burnt out with things. Having, like I mentioned, having both sides of my work, the two-dimensional art and the models, really helps that I can bounce back and forth from day to day, whatever I'm feeling more that day. But then there's also the reality of deadlines and that you just often just have to push through. And I'll be perfectly honest, like I get burnt out on specific pieces and maybe I don't feel like working on it anymore.
Yeah.
But I always know that like on the other side of that, if I just keep pushing through, I'll get through it. And often knowing that the paycheck is on the other side is a really good motivator. That's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and there are times where it's okay to set a piece aside and step back from it, and it's healthy to do. But I find often if a piece is feeling difficult or I'm not sure, uncertain of how it's going to progress forward, what I'm going to do, my natural instinct is to just like stop work or
Right.
avoid it, and like it just sort of hangs over me. And anytime I'm just like, all right, we're just charging ahead. We're gonna do something. If it doesn't work, I can fix it, but it's not working now, so I have to do something. So it's just recognizing more when I'm avoiding something out of fear of the outcome, and pushing past that is always really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I think those kinds of things can be good learning experiences too, because I find like if something's bothering me about a model, normally it's because I just need to go and like either learn something, or like if I, like you said, if I push through it, normally I'm like better for it afterwards.
Right. And worst case scenario, whatever you tried didn't work, but it wasn't working anyway. So
right. Yeah.
You're just back at square one, and that's okay. And you learned what didn't work. So
Yep, and that's part of the process too.
Yeah.
So I guess moving into sort of like the studio side of things, I know people work in like a wide variety of ways. Some people work at their kitchen table, and that's totally fine. And then other people have, you know, designated spaces. What's your workspace like? Has it always been that way? Like, take me along that journey.
Yeah. So for the first several years, my workspace was in my parents' basement, which was wonderful. It worked great for me. So I do have a designated studio space, but it's a joint painting studio and model horse studio.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like to have a designated space just so I can shut the door on my work, and kind of, because I don't leave home, it's nice to have at least a room that I can leave work a little bit in a different room at least. A little bit of separation from my work and my living space.
Yeah, awesome. So you primarily work with oils now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any like favorite brands to use, favorite tools, mediums, things like that within that realm?
As far as like brands of oils, when I first started, Daniel Smith was recommended to me, and so I use a lot of those just because honestly I still have most of the colors, the original tubes, because oils go such a long way. But I also, with my two-dimensional painting, I had been using mostly Winsor Newton oils, so some of those have kind of filtered in. I haven't found like that there's a brand that I absolutely have to have. I haven't found strong differences. As far as brushes, I honestly use pretty cheap brushes. So when I'm doing lots of like scrumbling and they're getting beat up, and that's okay. And in fact, I like the way that I get my like herring detail in oils is by having those brushes that were originally nice and crisp, and I use them to really blend the oil so that they get all frayed and work much better for creating the hair texture. So I'm perfectly fine with cheap. And the ones I use, these are really cheap, and they come in different sizes. They're silver white, and I use the Filberts, and they come in both short handle and long handle. So like a 2 and a short handle is a very tiny brush. A 2 and a long handle is a bit bigger. I use both depending. So like I usually use like the 2s through the 6s in the long handle, and the 1, 2, and 4 in the short handle. And then I also use these for my acrylics as well.
Okay, cool.
I don't mix the brushes. So I have my acrylic brushes and oil brushes, but I use the same ones. And then I like to use these mops.
Oh yeah.
Are really nice for, we were talking about brush strokes. After I apply the paint, I have several of these. They're just really big and fluffy. And they are Winsor Newton University Series 232. And this is like a 3/4 inch. I think I use some that are 1/2 inch. They're just really big and fluffy. So then I'll just take this over the entire model and I'll really softly blend it and remove the brush strokes.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lifesaver.
Yeah. Because it's really, you want brushes that are stiff enough to, I mean, not too stiff, but have enough bounce to them that they will apply the paint where you need it, but then just to take a nice big mop brush over everything.
Do you ever run into like
Great.
with the cheaper brushes that they like shed on the model at all, or have you not run into that?
Not with oils, sometimes a little bit with acrylic, but I can pick it out. I definitely have a much bigger problem with just dust, and that's what most people wonder, how do you solve the problem of dust? You don't, you just deal with it.
Do you like take like really fine sandpaper and just kind of buff it? Or?
Yeah, so like with oils, if it's like a big enough piece, or if I see it while it's wet, I'll try to like just pick it out with my fingernail and then, you know, paint over the spot again. That's if it's while it's wet. Sometimes it's easier to wait until it's dry, and once it's dry, I'll again like use my fingernail or a carbide scraper to just very lightly pick it out. And sometimes, yeah, it takes off the paint in that area, but if you're doing a tiny enough little scrape there, it's going to be small enough. And if you're continuing on with oils, usually I don't have any problem of the next layer just covering up that spot. Or if it is a big enough difference, I've also I just keep working until I finish the oils, and you can just like spot fill that in with an extra layer, or with the acrylics, depending on the color. Like say if I'm using doing a black horse, once I'm done with the oils, just a tiny dab of black in that spot can fix it. If it's another color that's a little more specific, that can be harder to color match with acrylics, but yeah, there are different ways of solving them. It's really annoying, it always is, but
yeah, that's one of the annoyances too. Yeah, you're right, you can't really stop the dust. Some people kind of like take giant tubs and like cover them while they're drying, which I guess helps to some extent. But I also wonder if that makes them take longer to dry too.
I don't know. And actually for me, I don't feel like most of the dust happens while it's drying as much, or if it does, that dust is going to have so lightly landed on it that it's going to pick right off with probably no marring of the paint. The hardest dust to deal with is I think what I deal with most is just dust, like maybe that was on the brush or got mixed on. Like honestly, I should probably like more thoroughly clean my palette more often, because I'm sure there's dust on that. So it's that dust that gets in while you're painting that is more cumbersome.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is.
So do you have a favorite or least favorite scale to work in?
I don't think so. I will say micro mini, I've never painted a micro mini. So
they're all the rage.
I could say that's my least favorite, but I don't know. Yeah. I've never done it. Actually, I think I have it. It was like probably within my first like 3 or 4 years. So I can't really. And it was the Breyer mini winnies that were like kind of rubbery, which I didn't love. So I can't really speak too much on how much I like that size. Yeah, I think any size. Stablemates are really nice because they just paint up so much more quickly. And yeah, the smaller detail doesn't bother me with them. In fact, sometimes it's easier because I'm not working with so much space. But then there's something about the presence of the traditionals, and so many of my favorite sculpts are in the traditionals. And then, you know, there aren't as many little bits in classic scale, but those are really fun too, because they kind of take some of the best of both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like some of the resins that have been coming out lately are kind of in that curio scale. Yeah. And I do like that because you get to have like the detail that sometimes the little guys just can't have, but then also like you said, they're not like, they don't take quite as long to paint as the
Yeah.
I did want to talk about your YouTube channel because I know you've done some tutorials on there. Was that like, did you have people asking you, and did that start from there, or did you just want to put stuff out there?
I think some of both, and I will say that I'm like very bad at keeping up with it. We're like, I also don't do any video editing. I'm not sure I know exactly how to do that, so they're pretty unedited and rough. But yeah, I think the first one I did was roning with oils, and I think I did because it was something that I'm not sure that I saw someone do exactly like that. I had previously, the only way I knew how to roan and get a real true hair texture was to do it by hand with acrylics, which like I can't even fathom the amount of hours that I have put into some pieces. It's been years since I did roning with acrylics, but yeah, I put in a serious amount of time. So wanting to find something that was just as effective but faster. I mean, it still takes a lot of time to get that texture with the oils and a lot of finesse and really feeling, getting used to your tool and your medium. But yeah, I think I had some people ask how I do it, so I thought I would share it because yeah, it made my life a lot easier.
Yeah, it's probably easier.
I mean, roans are still one of the hardest, longest pieces to do, but this pales in comparison to what it was when I was doing it with acrylics. And I like the finish better because it's just a little bit softer. Mm-hmm. I got a soft finish with enough hours with the acrylics, but it's still just slightly harsh. Yeah. And with the oils, I just feel like it's butter. The detail is better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I personally don't mind when artists post things like that are just like unedited. I think it really like shows the process, and I think that's the heart of those videos anyways. People just kind of want to learn more about it. So yeah, I enjoyed.
Okay, good. Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I think then I did that with a dapple gray because I kind of took that and incorporated it into doing grays because they have that roan-like texture amidst the dapples. And that's been a much easier way of doing dapples for me too.
Yeah, because they're both of those roans and dapple grays in general. They're like time consuming and they're like very intricate, and it's easy to make if you're doing it with other mediums. At least I find it's hard to make it like really soft. Which for me, I guess, it breaks the realism, I guess, a little bit. But whenever artists are able to do it just with acrylics, I'm just like, wow, that's
yeah. No, and I love and that doing those sorts of color, like doing dapple grays, I think specifically is what really convinced me to try oils, because I was doing them with pastels, and like props to those artists who can really get that look very effectively with pastels. But with pastels, since you can only add and you can't really subtract, I was finding limitations for myself there, and going to oils where I could both add and subtract, push and pull lights and darks was like made so much more sense to me. And
this is also kind of, I guess, a bigger question, but what's one thing you'd like to see more of in the hobby? And this could be like artistry related or, completely aside.
It's a really good question. My first instinct would be, because I am just a painting artist and I don't really at this point collect myself, everything comes in to be painted to go out. So it's just the nature of it. So my first instinct is I would love to see some more great sculpting artists, but then I also am not sure that I want that because I have a hard enough time keeping up with everything that I want to paint already. So
yeah, so true.
Yeah.
Do you have like a dream sculpture that you want to paint still, or have you been able to check those boxes?
I think I've been pretty fortunate to get to check about any box. I'm sure there's a few like either obscure or older pieces that I would jump on the chance painting. but maybe none that come to mind that like I've just dying to paint. I will say I've gotten to paint 2 Stormwatch resins, but it's been, I mean, I purchased 2 copies when he first came out.
Yeah.
And I've been lately, like, he's still, like, is for sure, like, one of my top favorite pieces, if not my very favorite. And I've been itching to paint another one. And I've put out a couple calls, like, does anyone still have an unpainted one? Because I'd love to paint it, but haven't had any bites yet. So I think there are not too many of him unpainted left.
I know,
I would really love to paint another copy.
Well, if there's anybody out there that has one, then.
Yes, yeah. Hit me up.
Yeah. He's a beautiful sculpt. I think a lot of people want him. He's a grail for a lot of people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
It's a good one.
and I would love to see, because again, I painted 2 copies, but I was more towards the beginning of my career and skill level. But I'd love to be able to tackle one now with where I'm at.
Before and after.
Yeah.
Cool. Overall, what does the hobby mean to you? What has it brought into your life?
I just love being able to work with such gorgeous sculptures, and like how it's fed my artistry and also provided an income, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So I think all of that has been the biggest for me, like, because I was doing this successfully before. I've always wanted to be a self-employed artist.
Yeah.
But I was doing this successfully before I was doing my 2D work successfully and selling it. So I guess from a business standpoint, it's been really wonderful.
Yeah.
In that aspect. But yeah, I also love the community aspect of it. And I feel like I've been getting a little bit more involved, even though I still haven't done anything in person in a while. Being a little bit more involved with the people in the hobby and the community. And actually, I was going to go to BriarFest this year. It was going to be my first year back in forever. But as of now, I plan to be there next year and do the artisan galleries.
Oh, yay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking about going next year too, because I've been wanting to go back. I went for my first one was in 2013, I think. But yeah, I've been wanting to go back, and because then I wasn't like into the artistry side of it. It was, I was there for the Briars and that experience, which was fine. But I'd love to go back and, go to the artist galleries and all that stuff. So yay, exciting.
Yeah.
Sort of the last few questions. Do you have, what are your future goals for your art? Do you have specific things that you'd like to achieve in both short-term and long-term?
I don't know that I have specific goals exactly. Because I'd have to think about that. I think for me, a goal for so much of my life was just, like I mentioned, to be a successful self-employed artist, and I've reached that. So I guess just maintaining that, and that has been my focus a lot. I mean, and ultimately, the reason is so that I can keep doing it. If it's not financially successful, I can no longer do it. So that has been kind of my driving force goal.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a goal for a lot of people, is to be, at least somewhat self-sufficient as an artist. And so I think it's really cool that you've been able to do that. I want to turn over this part to you to plug your work. Any, if you want people to check out your Instagram or any social medias, things like that, feel free to plug away.
Yeah, you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook, and both of them it's Equine Confections Studio. Yeah, and I guess I'm also on YouTube, but who knows when the next video will be or what it will be.
It's out there though.
Yeah, I should do some more tutorials and live videos. Because I think people like them. Yeah. With BriarFest moving online, I'm still being part of the Artisan Gallery, and I'm still planning to have some things for sale. I have a whole string of medallions that, fingers crossed, I can finish up here. I lost a little momentum knowing that Briarfest wasn't happening, but yeah, I'm gonna in the next month here really crank up the production of those, and
Sweet.
hope to have a bunch of those available.
Yay, that's exciting. Well, awesome. I'll definitely have those either on screen or below in the show notes and stuff like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. That was the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was definitely one of my favorite interviews so far. It's just great getting to know Heather. She's a lovely person and has so much talent, and the fact that she shares it with the world is just amazing. I will have her website, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff linked in the description below. Definitely go check her out. She deserves the follow. If you want to stay tuned for more behind the scenes of the show, as well as keep up with me and my own artistic adventures, go ahead and follow me on my Instagram. It's Frost Studios Equine Art. Briarfest is only a week away, and so definitely go ahead and check out her social media if you guys are interested in getting updates about her Briarfest sale. She has some amazing pieces for sale, so you definitely don't want to miss it. Stay tuned for next week's episode featuring Morgen Kilbourn of Kilbourn Studios. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!